Final absorption in Ramakrishna. To have lived out the full biblical span of 70 years and 10, to have spent them dedicated and usefully in the course of religion, to have carried India's age-old message of spirituality and culture, and the relevance of the never-ending search for the supreme truth, to spread this to the countries across the 7 seas, and to have capped it all with 25 years as a leader of an organization with dignity and zeal, is given to a very few. But this is the life story of Swami Abhedananda, who attained his 73rd birthday in September 1938. Few could realize then that his lifespan was nearing to end, and he would live less than a year after the execution of the trust deed in respect of this entire Calcutta property belonging to the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society, which was afterwards known as the Ramakrishna Vedanta Movement. Thus, when the whole thing was consecrated to the name of his master, a great burden was lifted out of his heart, and he heaved a sigh of relief. His life's work had been done, and silently he began to prepare himself for his final journey. As he said, "I am only an instrument in the blissful sportive play of the Master, and the moment of my life's mission is over. I shall not wait even for a second longer." This is what Abhedananda spoke to a disciple on the occasion of his 73rd birthday, which was celebrated all over India. Abhedananda was now left alone. One by one, all of his beloved brother disciples had passed away before his eyes. What pained him most was the passing away of the last 3 presidents of the Movement mission, Swami Shivananda, Akhananda, and Vijayananda, which came in quick succession in the course of 5 years. Swami Shivananda, who was born in 1855, was the senior-most of all the disciples of Ramakrishna. He was popularly known in the order by the name of Mahapurush Maharaj, and his very presence was a benediction to all, and who, even in his ripe old age of 79, continued to instill faith into all and lead them along the spiritual path. He ceased to live in the mortal frame on 20th February 1939 after a prolonged illness following a stroke of thrombosis, which paralyzed his right side and deprived him of speech. The year 1934 was therefore reckoned as a catastrophic year in the history of the Belur Muth. A few days before his death, after the birthday celebration of Sri Ramakrishna, and Abhedananda, as usual, went to Belur to participate in it, but his heart was heavy on account of the illness of Swami Shivananda. He paid a visit to him at his sickbed, sat by his side, and touched his hands tenderly, and spoke a few words of affection and reverence. Shivananda passed away on the next day. A memorial meeting was held on March 4th in the Albert Hall, presided over by the Maharaja of Santosh and addressed by Swami Abhedananda. And it was one of the soul-stirring speeches the Swami gave on that occasion since his return to India. Shivananda was succeeded by Swami Akhananda as the president. An ardent disciple of Sri Ramakrishna and a staunch follower of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Akhananda was originally, in many respects, a man of wide travel and vast experience, and well possessed of a retentive memory. He wrote his Bengali memoirs in a fascinating style, with an admixture of spiritual conviction. The Muthan mission expected much of him, but God did not spare him long. He was snatched away by death on 7th February 1937, after occupying the honored post of the president for scarcely 3 years. Akhananda, it should be mentioned here, preferred to spend most of his time outside Belur and chiefly at Sargachi, the field of his lifelong labor, where he founded an orphanage. A diabetic patient since a long time, he fell into a diabetic coma and was brought to the Muth for treatment. Immediately on receipt of his illness, Abhedananda sent some of his sannyasin disciples to Sargachi to inquire about his condition. And in the morning of February the 7th, he received a message from the Muth that Gangadhar Maharaj was lying in a critical condition, and he had at once started for Belur. There, a touching scene happened. Before he could reach the Muth, Akhananda passed away. Abhedananda placed in his own hands a wreath round the neck of his brother disciple and returned to Calcutta after the last rites were performed. It was a heavy blow to him, for Akhananda, who inaugurated the birth centenary celebration of Sri Ramakrishna in February 1936, was to install the marble statue of the Master in the newly built temple at Belur. Following the death of Swami Akhananda, the last of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna to succeed to the presidency was Swami Vivekananda, who was previously the head of the Allahabad Center of the mission, and at the time the vice president of the order, to which post he was elected in April 1934. When he became president, his health had declined so much that an active life as before was no longer possible, and he passed away on 25th April 1938, after installing the idol of the Master in the beautiful temple at Belur, with a ceremony that was performed in the presence of Swami Abhedananda on the 14th of January that year. Here, a few words about the new Ramakrishna temple at Belur may not be out of place. The birth centenary of Sri Ramakrishna is an event by itself and may be looked upon as the crowning achievement of the whole Ramakrishna Movement, which had its inception in the year 1886, when Sri Ramakrishna lay sick at the Kasapur Garden House, and around him gathered the young hopefuls, the future apostles of the Avatar. It was therefore quite in the fitness of things that his followers made this an occasion for worldwide joy and a fresh attempt to propagate his message. It was a year-long function which began in February 1936 and ended a week after the next birthday in March 1937. A fitting epilogue to the centenary celebrations, there was erected a magnificent temple of Sri Ramakrishna at the Muth, the plan of which emanated from Swami Vivekananda. The foundation stone of the temple was laid as early as March 1929 by Swami Shivananda, and the entire plan of the temple was drawn by Swami Akhananda, who in 1897 was in the company of Swami Vivekananda when he studied carefully the architecture of northwest India with a view to incorporating its best features in his proposed temple of Sri Ramakrishna, so that it might be an epitome of Indian culture, just as the Master himself embodied the realization of the country's religious aspirations throughout the ages. Swami Abhedananda was then lying seriously ill in Calcutta when the ceremony of the dedication of the Sri Ramakrishna temple at the Muth came off on 14th January 1938. Swami Vivekananda invited Swami Abhedananda to be present at the ceremony, and he readily responded to it. How could he, the beloved son of the Master, remain aloof from this auspicious function? So he decided to participate in the ceremony and went to Belur, accompanied by some of his disciples and attendants who carried his medicine box as instructed by the physicians. This was his last visit to the Muth. On arriving there, he first visited the 3 temples dedicated to Swami Vivekananda, the Holy Mother, and Swami Brahmananda. He then slowly proceeded towards the new temple, where a large number of people had gathered to witness the memorial event. He was delighted to see the newly built temple, and when the news spread that Swami Abhedananda was present on the occasion, there was noticed esteemed jubilation, for everybody became anxious to have a glimpse of him. All eyes were then fixed on him as he entered into the new temple and moved slowly towards the sanctum. All around there was an atmosphere of serenity. Swami Vivekananda made open the temple after performing religious rites, and the ashes of the master had been placed in it. On the new altar was placed an image of the master in samadhi, executed in white Italian marble by a reputed Calcutta sculptor who came several times to the Ramakrishna Movement to study there the superb portrait of the master as drawn by Frank Dvorak, just to have an exact idea about the correctness of his future, particularly his hallowed face, so vivid and accurate in the Dvorak painting. What was Swami Abhedananda doing all this time? He stood silently before the sanctum, while the young monks sang in chorus the soul-inspiring Ramakrishna hymns, which was composed by Abhedananda during the time when he was spending his days in austerity at the Baranagar Movement. As he heard those lines and looked at the statue, he felt the living presence of the Master and at once lost consciousness. He stood there for a while, motionless. Did it portend that his play also was soon to be over? Perhaps so. He knew more than anybody else as he witnessed the installation ceremony that the day of his final absorption in the Master was not far off. With Swami Vivekananda gone from the scene, there now remained only Swami Abhedananda as the last surviving disciple of Ramakrishna. This was perhaps the greatest glory of his life. While the other brother disciples had left this world one by one, it fell on his lot to linger a little more. It is on record that following the train accident during his return journey from Darjeeling to Calcutta in September 1938, Abhedananda's health gradually declined, resulting in his confinement to his room due to infirmity. The play had the end, and the Swami entered into the final beatitude on September the 8th, 1939. And with his passing away, the first generation of monks who had founded the Ramakrishna order was gone, leaving the movement and the world distinctly poor. We refrain from giving a graphic description of this poignant event. His last wish was to remain at the feet of his master, and accordingly his last rites were performed with due solemnity at the Kosapur cremation ground on the bank of the Ganges, where 47 years ago the sacred body of Sri Ramakrishna was consigned to the fire. The thousands who gathered at the burning ghat and watched their beloved spiritual leader in his last rites must have asked, just as Shelley had done, "And is this death? The pyre has disappeared, the pestilence, the tyrant, the throng." The flames grew silent. Slowly there is heard the music of a breath-suspending song. The song, of course, was Vedanta, for which he had lived and worked. Thus passed away the last beloved son of Sri Ramakrishna. The voice of the hero of 100 platforms was hushed over. Thus ended a great epoch that began at Dakshineswar with the advent of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. What now remained was the spiritual glow, which will never be extinguished. Then the ashes were gathered and carried to the Ramakrishna Movement in a copper vessel, to be deposited there on the master's bed and for regular worship. Though the hearts of his disciples and admirers were enveloped in an unalterable gloom, yet they knew it very well that Swami Abhedananda, the great disciple of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, could have no death. He only discarded his mortal frame to be accessible to all in a more real sense for all time to come. And the ashes and the things used by him were to remain as mementos of that everlasting presence. Truly so, the river of the great Vedantic monk's soul re-entered the ocean of the divine being, which has no beginning and end. Abhedananda is not gone. His work is not done. He is still in the pilgrimage of life, holding his lamp of truth and knowledge to light the way of humanity. It is blasphemy to talk of such a man as dead. No, we cannot call it a death in the ordinary sense of the term. Men like Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and Abhedananda can never die. When they depart, they are simply absorbed into that great being from where they came. Therefore, spiritually speaking, it is nothing but the final merging of the little self in the universal self. When their earthly play is over, they abandon their apparent individualities with a view to be absolutely united with the Supreme Being. When Swami Abhedananda executed the trust deed and put his signature on it on the birthday of his master in 1939, he knew very well that his final absorption in Ramakrishna would not be delayed more than a few months. And since that day, though apparently lying seriously ill, yet a feeling of consciousness of the freedom of the soul was with him. And there were forebodings of what was going to happen soon. The very last days, or to be accurate, the last few months which Abhedananda passed on earth, were indeed full of events indicating the approaching end, though at the time they passed by unnoticed by all those who were about him. Sick as he looked, there was none probably who suspected how near the end was approaching the life of the last surviving disciple of Ramakrishna. As days went by, the Swami felt more and more the necessity of withdrawing himself from directing the work of the Muth, leaving the management in the hands of them that were about him. His last days were in fact the days of solitary meditation, preparing himself to merge in Maha Samadhi, or final illumination, as is natural with a luminous soul like him. So on that early hours of the dawn of September the 8th, 1939, what happened at the sanctuary of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Muth was not just the passing away of Swami Abhedananda. As the first rays of the morning sun shone tenderly on his serene face with eyes closed, it seemed to his disciples that their master was not dead. He was meditating upon God. He was on his final sleep, which was verily the awakening into the highest consciousness of his real self, Atman, as one in Brahman. Abhedananda, the high priest of monism, of unity, of oneness, the beloved son of Sri Ramakrishna, and the greatest preacher of Vedanta itself. His life was a great life, having fulfilled its mission, and he disappeared from the public gaze.